Welcome to Insights into Insurance with Tom Sorensen of Americana Insurance Group. All information provided is educational in nature and not intended to be acted upon without first consulting the appropriately licensed professional.
It's Insights into Insurance with Americana Insurance's Tom Sorensen. And Tom, good Saturday morning to you.
Hey, good Saturday morning to you, Paul.
We've had a very warm week the past couple of days. Have you seen any call or gotten any calls with harvest or anything?
Well, actually, we do have some replants that are happening where guys have either had drowned outs or the soybeans are having a hard time coming through crust on the ground when you get hard rains and then you get sun, and that can happen. So, yeah.
And is that something they cover with their crop insurance, too?
Yeah, you can, yes. Yep, there is some replant coverage. It's not terrific, but it's something that they do have.
Okay.
So, yes.
Because I know it was all rain, not a lot of sunshine, and now we kind of dried out a little bit. So.
Yep. And so now they're looking at, well, if that isn't coming up by now, some of them are looking at replanting. And so it's not a lot, but there is some out there.
Well, it's been a tough couple of years, so we like to look out for them, too.
That's right. Exactly. So,
Tom, if you're all right with it, I think we'll get to our listener email.
Perfect.
All right. It's from a listener named Scott. It says, "Hello, Insights to Insurance radio show. I'm a local business owner, and I have workman's compensation insurance on my employees. I have an experience mod factor for my business. My agent has never really explained what that is. Can you, Scott?"
Hey, Scott, I sure can. And first of all, though, before we get into what is a experience mod factor, I thought, you know what? With this email, I'll let my listeners know a little bit about work comp and the history of work comp and what is work comp. I'm sorry if I say work comp and not workers' compensation. It's a lot easier and quicker, and most people know it as work comp.
Yep.
So, history of work comp dates back in the United States, dates back to 1855. Georgia and Alabama created a work comp plan, or I should say the states didn't, but it started there.
Okay.
Then 26 other states passed similar acts between 1855 to 1907. Early laws permitted injured employees to sue the employer, and then the employer would have to prove their negligence or non-negligence or act of omission. So the employee would have to say the employer didn't do this or didn't do that. Basically, maybe an attorney would disagree with me, but I always use the definition of negligence as something that somebody should have done or somebody that shouldn't have done. Okay? So, and so then in 1902, was the first statewide workers' comp law, and that was in Maryland. And that was the first law and then the first law covering federal employees was 1906. By 1949, every state had enacted a work comp program, as basically we kind of see it as in today's world. Okay, I'm sure there's been many changes over those years, but that was basically the start of the state mandated, enacted programs.
Born out of the Industrial Revolution, seemingly, right?
That's right. Yep.
Okay.
Exactly. So, yeah. The other thing is, so Scott and the listeners, what is work comp? The purpose of workman's comp is provide a prompt payment of medical and disability losses, provide a single remedy, thus reducing legal costs. So we go back to where used to be the employees would have to sue the employer. Well, that's shouldn't have to be done anymore because you got the workman's comp policy insurance, okay?
All right.
Provide predictability of the cost of job-related injuries, okay? So now with different jobs and class codes, they give each type of job a class code, okay?
Like an actuary does, where you have more risk to the workers rather than, like radio might have more of a risk than, I don't know, or less of a risk than someone cleaning windows on a skyscraper.
Right, exactly. Okay, so cleaning windows on a skyscraper might be you have to pay, I have no idea, but $50 per $100 worth of
coverage.
Or payroll, I should say, where for a radio announcer it's probably maybe $1 or $2. Okay, so and then the last thing, it encourages loss prevention and promote interest in safety to the employer or to the employees. So,
what about as a business, Tom? Because Scott runs a business.
Yep.
What are some things that he kind of has to do to make sure that he is in line with workers' comp?
Super question, because this is what they call is what are the common law employer obligations with work comp, or as an employer in the state of Minnesota or federally, this is the things that you have to do by common law. You have to provide a safe place to work, adequate number of competent fellow employees. Okay, so with that said, if I was running a construction business and I'm out there and I know I'm going to be hiring this guy that's basically drunk 24/7, okay, that's not probably a good hiring practice, and that's putting other people's lives in danger. Okay, I have to have safe tools and equipment. Warn of known dangers. Okay,
look up, look alive.
Right, exactly. Yeah, that's a great. You see it all the time on the freeways now and that, where there's high electrical wires, but if you don't see that sign, you might forget about that and could get electrocuted. Make and enforce safety rules. Okay, so as an employer, they have to create safety rules according to their business or work and then enforce them. Okay.
All right. Now, when Scott asked the question, there was a piece in there that I understand workers' compensation, but when it comes to, he's mentioned something about an experienced mod. What is that talking about?
Right. Okay. So I shouldn't say every, but almost every, there's each business, each company that has a workman's comp policy has a experience modification rating, or we call it an experience mod rating. Okay, and what that is, it is a credit or a debit factor based on your business's loss and payroll history. Okay, in that situation, lower number is better than a higher number. Okay, so what is that? Okay, so basically, in each class code or each type of business, this is what the expected losses of workman's comp is going to be. Okay, if you fall under that, okay, you get a better experience mod rating. If you go over that number, it gives you a worse rating. Okay, so why is that a good thing or a bad thing? Well, so if you have a 0.80 mod factor, 1.0 is the actual, what they say, this is average.
Okay.
0.80 will give you a 20% discount on your premium. Okay. If you're at 1.0, you're getting 0% discount. You're getting what the average rate is. Okay. Now, let's say you're at 1.20. You're going to get surcharged another 20% on your work comp rating.
Okay, makes sense. I'll tell you what, then, what we'll do is we'll take a break and we'll answer Scott's question more in about 30 seconds, Tom.
That sounds perfect.
You're listening to Insights into Insurance with Americana Insurance's Tom Sorensen.
You know when your line starts singing and you're positive you've hooked into a big one, but sometimes everything stops. Suddenly, it's a sad story about the one that got away. Crops can be like that too. You put in all the work, but there's always a chance nature might try and take it away. At Americana, we help farmers find the best crop insurance options to protect against loss from hail, excess moisture, drought, wind, and fire. So put Americana in your tackle box. Americana Insurance. We're the A-team. AmericanaInsurance.com.
Back here on Insights into Insurance with Americana Insurance's Tom Sorensen. And Tom, we are answering listener Scott's question having to deal with workers' compensation and something that we just talked about, an experience mod rating where 1 is your average number.
Right, 1 is your average number, and anything below that gives you a discount, or anything above that gives you a debit. Okay, so where do you want to be? You want to be on the credit side, okay, the discount side. So,
Sub 1.
Yeah, right. Okay, and that's probably one of the most important things that you want for your work comp insurance is having a good mod factor. Okay.
All right.
So what are the factors that go into a mod factor? It's a very complex formula, but here are the key ones: actual losses in dollars, the actual amount of losses by numbers. And then based on a formula of, again, what I was talking about is expected in your industry or that class code. Okay. So example, a radio announcer might have a class code. I'm just throwing out a number. I have no idea what the class code number is without looking it up, but a radio announcer might have a class code of 4855.
Sure.
I'm just saying, well, there's many of those class codes. They actually define what each job is and which each class code stands for. Okay.
All right. And so basically it's how much, how many, and then you factor in that formula that you talked about of
right.
your risk factor.
Yeah, it's a very complex formula, but those are the main things that you want to control.
All right. So Scott wants to know, because it was never explained by his insurance agent, so it sounds like he's not with Americana Insurance at this point.
No, he's not. Not that I know of.
And so if Scott, he's listening right now, what are some things he can do to maybe help out that mod factor to maybe bring him either closer to 1 or a little bit below 1?
Right. And the key about that mod factor is if you're getting over 1, and there could be a point where insurance companies won't write you. Okay, so then you have to go to the Minnesota work comp pool, which is normally significantly more cost to get your work comp coverage. Okay, so what are the steps to take? Needs to be doing training. Okay, and so how do you do that? Talk to your agent about resources that your work comp carrier has to develop a training program. Okay, if you got work comp insurance, there should be a carrier there that should be able to be willing to give you resources.
Okay.
Or even come out and do training for you. Okay. The other thing I would say is develop a return to work program. Why would you want to have a return to work program? The key to work comp is getting that employee back to work as soon as possible. 4 keys to a return to work program is you draft a policy to give to your employees as a formal commitment to the return to work program. Have the employees sign it. Appoint a claims coordinator in your business. Select a primary care clinic, and then identify transitional jobs that can be done. Basically, sometimes they call them light duty jobs.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody is hurt, and say, okay, these are jobs that they can do while they are hurt or on work comp. Okay,
Makes sense.
Because it cuts back on the cost or how much work comp is paying out. And you're saying, well, why would I want to pay somebody when the work comp will pay? Well, there's reasons, and I'll get to that. So I got some what you would call Tom's tips. Okay, first of all, medical cost. A medical cost to a work comp policy loss is discounted 70% of your rating on your mod factor.
Okay, makes sense. So what we're going to see in there is going to be a less than portion of what would really be paid out because of what's going on.
Right. And then you got indemnity payments. Time off of work is basically what it is not discounted at it's 100%. It goes towards your experience mod factor. Okay, so medical cost isn't quite as significantly hitting your mod factor it is as basically payments of your payroll or your indemnity payments that the work comp carrier has to pay.
Okay.
In the state of Minnesota, there is a 3-day waiting period before the indemnity payments kick in from your work comp.
Okay, why is that?
That's each state has their own waiting period. Okay, some are 2, some are 1, some are 7. Okay, before that before work comp carrier has to pay. It's a waiting period. Now, if it goes over the 3 days, then they have to go back to first day 1. Okay, just like a disability policy, if you ever had that, there's waiting periods there. Sometimes they can be 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. So that's something like that. But in work comp, it's 3 days in the state of Minnesota.
Okay.
So after hearing what I just was saying, what do you think you want to do? You would probably want to get that employee back to working and doing something, correct?
Yeah.
I even have carriers that if they can't come up with something for that person to do, that they got nonprofits that they'll have them go and work at. Yes, you pay for that employee to go to that nonprofit to work, but again, it's not money coming out of the work comp what do I want to say, claim. So what does that do? It helps your mod factor, okay? Because that mod factor can cost or save you thousands of dollars, okay? In the long run, that's the best thing.
All right. So, Scott, hopefully we answered your question. But, of course, if we got to something we scratched the surface on and you're still curious about, we can give you a call, right?
Absolutely, and I can tell you I did. That's what I did. I scratched the surface, okay? Anything on when we do this radio show, I scratch the surface. Just to, these things and insurance gets so much more in-depth, but again, I'm not going to bore you with those details, okay? But yes, and you can call me at 507-377-2000, Scott, or anybody else that's got any questions on work comp, or you can also email me questions for the show, or even just email me questions that you want about your insurance at insights@americanainsurance.com.
Thank you very much, Tom. We'll be back next week.
Thanks, Paul. That was awesome.
You've been listening to Insights into Insurance from Americana Insurance Group. All information provided is intended to be educational in nature. Before acting upon any information obtained during the Insights into Insurance radio show broadcast, consult an appropriately licensed professional.